Have you told your friends that you see ghosts?
Oh, absolutely not.
Gina Rodriguez returns in Not Dead Yet.
I'm back, baby.
Who is that?
Oh, she's the obituary writer.
And Brad Garrett joins the brilliant ensemble cast.
Titan, Maverick, Titan of all Mavericks. These are all words used to describe me.
Not Dead Yet. Season premiere. Tonight, 8:30, 7:30 Central on ABC. And stream on Hulu.
It's the Happy Families podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
All this week on the Happy Families podcast, we are talking about time crunch moments. Today, mornings. Those moments where the pressure is on, where parents are kind of freaking out and the kids are not necessarily being compliant. We thought it was a helpful idea, given that school has gone back about a week ago now for Queensland and Victoria. We're starting week 2 of school, term 4. New South Wales, the ACT and WA, it's week 1. School goes back today or tomorrow, depending on which school your kids are going to. South Australia and Tassie, they've got one more week of holidays. They started their holidays a bit later than everyone else. But mornings, Kylie, time crunch moments.
We've spoken a lot about this on the podcast in recent times, and specifically about the routine and structure that we've created around our mornings.
Making mornings magic. But our thinking's evolved, hasn't it, since we started talking about this a while ago?
Well, our children have grown too, and so that definitely makes a difference. We're dealing with a 9-year-old and a couple of teenagers, which is very different to dealing with than when they were in primary school altogether.
So what we thought we would do here is, for those of you who are new to the podcast or need a refresher on making mornings magic, we thought we would share the old ideas that we've probably shared on the podcast once or twice previously. But then we want to step into how our thinking around these ideas has evolved, partly because we've changed, partly because our own circumstances have changed, but also partly because every family needs different ideas to make this stuff work. So I'm going to whiz through our old ideas, and then Kylie is going to step through our new ideas, the evolution of how to make mornings magic. So in the old days, it was very much about getting the kids independent, about getting the kids to make stuff happen. The first thing that we've always emphasized is that the morning begins the night before. This means getting uniforms ready or getting school bags ready or making decisions about the next day before bed. Things like, what are we going to have for breakfast? What are we going to have for lunch? Making sure that the right stuff's in the fridge so that everything goes smoothly the next day. Morning begins the night before, especially in terms of prep and decisions. Core components that really haven't changed even with new thinking, but you'll talk more about that shortly. We also focused very much on making sure that we got up 10, 15 minutes earlier than we normally would so that we could be ready, and then getting the kids up 10, 15 minutes earlier so that they've got a bit more margin in their morning. They don't have to rush. But essentially, at the very core of it, the Making Mornings Magic formula that we built is about keeping the kids moving, getting them following their list, making sure that they've got plenty of autonomy in what's happening, and being there to support them while they do it. So that's the old way. And it served us very, very well for the majority of our child rearing with all 6 of our kids. Kylie, things have changed. We have some new ideas. How do you think that mornings have shifted as we've just kept on practicing and practicing the things that are important to us?
So with teenagers in the house, it's a little bit harder to get them up so early in the mornings. And I just was noticing that it was actually causing a bit of contention in the home.
From about the age of, maybe 11 or 12?
Yeah.
We find that the kids don't want to get up anymore. Like when they're little, they can't wait to get out of bed. And then,
well, they're usually jumping or knocking on the door, jumping on our bed, knocking on the door to wake us up way too early. But I realized that this was causing a lot of angst in the house, and I wanted to take that away. And so one of the things that we've done, while we still recognize that the best mornings begin the night before, we've let the kids sleep in a little bit more.
Right.
And given them just a much slower start. You and I are very different with mornings. I really like to just wake up in my own time, and I might read for 10 or 15 minutes. I really just enjoy being able to be there without the necessity to jump out of bed.
And I jump out of bed at about 4:30. and go and ride or swim or run or do something. And I come back at, I don't know, 6:30 or 7 o'clock, a million miles an hour. I'm like, why is everyone still in bed? What's going on? So this has been a hard adjustment for me to step into a slower start to the day. But it has felt different and felt good.
It's felt way better, and the kids have responded better to it. So that idea that fast is slow and slow is fast, I think has really come to fruition in our morning routines.
And we actually talked about this just recently on an I'll Do Better Tomorrow, where you had said to me, we need to slow down so we can go fast. It's kind of like when you're doing a maths problem with a child who is, I don't know, doing long division or doing some algebra, and they're getting a head full of steam, they're getting really emotional, and they keep on making mistakes. But when you slow them down, they actually move through it more fluently with fewer mistakes because the process is happening gently. It's the same thing, right? We've taken the rigidity and the pressure out of the mornings, which is really hard to do because sometimes you've got to get out the door. There is stuff to be done, but this seems to be working.
Because everything's done the night before, their uniforms are out, their school bags are packed, their shoes are ready to go. In the morning, they literally have to get up, put their uniform on, have some breakfast, brush their hair, brush their teeth, and except for making a few decisions around lunch, they're done.
And we have found so very much that by making those decisions about breakfast and lunch the night before, even that makes things so much smoother. I mean, when the kids don't know what to have for breakfast, you end up waiting 15 or 20 minutes while they stare at the fridge and they stare at the pantry and they get distracted and they don't want to do this, or they want something but we don't have it. And so you've got to work out, how in the world do I leave the kids here and have time to get to the shops? Like it's really, really tricky to do all of that. There's got to be better solutions. And we've found that night before, making those decisions, especially around the food stuff, makes such a difference.
And I think the other thing that's been really important with the changes we've made is that you and I are a lot more involved. In the early days, we kind of gave them their list and we created the structure and the routine for them, but we tried to give them the autonomy to work through the list at their own pace and in their own way. But it meant that we were kind of constantly kind of having to jab at them. It's what it felt like to them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You know, these gentle reminders, but at the end of the day, Mum and Dad are just at me all the time. I've got to keep moving through. Whereas by doing what we've done, we've actually taken a lot of things off the list. The kids used to have to do jobs in the morning before school. But because we've actually got a longer commute than we've had for a little while, we just kind of felt like, let's just simplify this. Let's just make this as peaceful a start to their day as possible because it sets them up beautifully.
Yeah. So slowing things down, making decisions ahead of time, being involved and being part of the process, and simplifying. They're the 4 amendments. They're the 4 ways that our magic mornings have evolved. And what has happened as a result of that is that our children are easier to deal with. And in slowing down, we do see that things get done with a whole lot less fuss. One question that I think a lot of people will be listening to this conversation and feeling frustrated by is, but what about those days where you've got to hurry? What about those days where you've got to get out the door? And for some families, that is kind of every day, right? What do you do on those days?
The key to everything is everything begins the night before. So if you know that you've got an early start tomorrow, then maybe it means it's a pre-packed lunch. So it's actually all done the night before. But what I've actually noticed, we've had a couple of mornings at the end of term where we had to be there half an hour early. Like it was a big deal. We're usually maybe on time and maybe a little bit not on time a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But this was a particularly, stressful morning. But I noticed that it actually wasn't stressful because everything had been done the night before, and it was just, and that morning I actually said to the kids, we're not even going to make lunches today. You can just have tuck shop. It was a really easy way to kind of get out of the stress and the strain and get out the door on time, until we got a flat tire, and that changed everything.
Fast.
You can't plan for everything.
You can't plan for everything, I know. But I think what's critically important here is when you do the prep, when you know what you need, when you make arrangements to get things organised, when decisions are made ahead of time, you can slow things down. The other thing is we often make a big deal about leaving on time when the deadlines aren't nearly as serious as we make them out to be.
And I think what I'm noticing in our kids is that they just live in this world of rush all the time. I
Such
think
a
about
good line.
our 9-year-old who constantly is frustrated because she's halfway through something at school and she's told she has to pack up and move on to the next subject. It's like they don't ever get time to just move through things at their own pace. They're always being shoved to the next activity. So whatever I can do on my end to just slow things down and allow them to have the time that they need to transition in more natural ways, the better and happier my children are.
Making mornings magic, the old and the evolved. We hope that this has been helpful for dealing with those time crunch moments in your family across the next week or so as the kids head back to school. Thank you so much for listening to the Happy Families podcast, produced by Justin Rawlin from Bridge Media. Craig Bruce is our executive producer. If you would like more information about how to make your family happier, please visit us at happyfamilies.com.au.